I'm Carmise Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an asset that we need to deal with. Sunset, they just abandoned me and come back, they've been gone, they've been gone. They've been gone, they ain't seen nobody, so I guess it's over. Hello, welcome, Happy New Year. I think this is the first live I've done for the year. I'm not sure, but hopefully you're enjoying 2022 thus far. I know I am. Well, as the title indicates, well, let me just step back before I jump right into it and introduce myself, just in case it's the first time that we are getting acquainted. I'm attorney Carmise Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area. And I have been practicing law, specifically on family law out of my career, I would say about last decade or so. And the purpose of these videos is when I learn something that I can share with you to empower you to be more informed and make better decisions. I think that I am serving humanity, and I went to Howard University School of Law, so it's called Paying It Forward. Is something good for the order? Is there something out there that you can share that can help us all? So I want to go through protective orders. We have been dealing with a rash of protective orders, so I've been focused on them. And as I learn information, I want you to just be more aware. So, and as we prepare for cases, you spend more time on it, you focus, you read the case law. So it's straight out of the chronicles of the Carmise Graves Law Firm, and we're going to jump into this. So protective orders. One of the things that you have to realize, and I'm really concerned about now, just out the gate, I'm going to say this for the greater good. I practice family law. A lot of protective orders come out of, that's the nature of them, that there is some sort of close connection, whether you were married, currently married within the last year, live together, have a child in common, have those tight familiar bonds. That really is what's at the crux of a protective order. It's quasi-criminal. The stakes are really high. That's why I'm going to continue to put this information out there, because it's kind of just like elevated. The law has a lot of sensitivity because of the loss of life, and how intimate relationships can really escalate emotionally quickly and get out of control. That's what they're designed to stop, right? So it deals with a couple of different aspects of what can happen and how it can unfold and who it can impact. So today I'm going to go into abuse, because that's a particular type of infraction that civil protective orders are designed to protect against. So you want to make sure, hold on one second, I want to make sure that you understand clearly what the definition is and who it impacts. So let's jump in, because under a protective order, someone could be alleging, maybe it's yourself that needs a protection, or someone could be asserting that you are doing a number of things. So if you guys have this close relationship, just before we get into the law, I'm going to tell you these protective orders can be damning to your reputation. It creates some of this kind of like history. People can be knocked out of jobs. Clearances can be lost. Certain jobs won't hire you if you have infractions. Sometimes they call them moral inturpitude. So they're really serious. Okay. So one of the aspects that we're dealing with, so I would just say that if you're in a relationship, and particularly a lot of times men find themselves on the other side of this claim, and you're in a relationship and it's escalating at home, you have to know that that can be an issue, So I don't want you guys to, if it's escalating, you're going to have to really make a decision and decide whether this is a safe place for you to continue to be in, hold on one second. So this is the situation. You're at home, things are escalating. It comes up a lot. It could be a fight. You know what I mean? Physical abuse. So let's just back up. So there's a couple different aspects, like I told you. Someone could be alleging. So it's clear that if there is a petition, you need to know what someone is alleging. So they can allege that there's domestic violence. They can allege that there was physical abuse. That's the one we're going to go into. They can allege that there was abuse on behalf of the child that you guys have in common, and that may be at your hand. So that comes up a lot, where it can be that dad or mom, somebody spanked a child and the other parent doesn't agree with corporal punishment. Sometimes, and my biggest pet peeve with protective orders is a lot of times this comes up because the parties don't get along, and sometimes it can be just to gain leverage in a custody case, because if there's a child involved, the court can change a current custody order, and if there's none in place, put one in place. So that's really what we don't want. I'm going to say, if you're heavy-handed and it's escalating and you guys are getting physical, know in the law there is this thing called this protective order that can cause you a lot of consternation. So you're definitely going to want to get a consultation to determine if you need to consent or come up with a strategy, because the consequences, the law is not playing around. Okay. So, and you have to watch it, because it could be for a while that you guys were both involved and you was hitting and she was hitting, or she was hitting and he was hitting, whatever. And now someone lost, someone's bitter, and now they want to claim that it was a one-sided incident. So these are personal. These deal with what's happening in the household, and you think it's just between you and that other person. But sometimes you have those kind of people that will call the police, or, and I'm going to say, so watch maintaining that back and forth, because you could trying to get your truck driver's license or apply for the business loan or get clearance for this great job, and now you got this hanging. So if you got toxic relationships hanging around in your life, they can spill over into your opportunities, So what I want it to be fair, and to be fair about this is, if you're being abusive, you should not be being abusive, and someone should be protected from you. But also, if you're being falsely accused, you should not be falsely accused. And usually I find myself in a situation, trying to advocate for folks as best I can and make sure that this is a fair outcome, right? So typically, if you really did something, you probably would be on the side of maybe consenting to not do that no more. Now, if you didn't do it and you're being falsely accused, and consenting would mean that you lose some rights or something like that, then you might have to go to trial. And that's exactly what happened last week. We had to go to bat on it and really suss out whether it was a fair, allegation, because you could really impugn someone's character. So it's not a joke, and we don't take it lightly. So just to give you a sense of abuse, So abuse is, this idea that there's some serious bodily harm, like, there's an injury, right? So you abuse me, right? There's different ones that say that you threatened to do something to me, or you were stalking me, or you were doing, but we're talking about serious, when someone claims there was abuse. So in the case that we were working on, it was in terms of the child. Mother alleged that dad had abused the child. And they're looking there at that serious bodily harm, whether there were assault charges filed, because this is quasi-criminal, and there can be, and oftentimes will be, criminal charges. That's why it's a big deal to invoke these protective orders, because not only could it go along the civil route, right, to deal with the behavior, could go criminal as well. The assault charge on the criminal side, there is, they screen the petitions. And if they think that there's some assault there, there could be criminal charges. So in this situation, that was not the case. It was alleged that dad had abused the child. So to look at, one of the things is what was abuse, what's considered abuse, and generally is this idea, and this is not serious bodily harm, right? And you're going to be alleging that someone did something that caused serious bodily harm, and that's what's going to be an issue. And it's not only, as you look deeper in it, and we're going to focus on child abuse in particular, it's it's whether there was some malicious intent as well, whether someone, because we hear in the community, y'all go ahead up there these days talking about beat your kids, beat your kids, you know what I mean? And we're going to get into the distinction between corporal punishment and abuse, because usually if it's between the parents, and a lot of times that can be what's at issue. But let me tell you, serious bodily harm will leave bruises. You will probably take some action to take care of those bruises because they're serious. So there are probably medical reports and things of that nature. So looking at the case, and this is how we suss out whether it's valid or not, whether it makes sense or not, because if it really occurred, there are certain things that you would have naturally done, right? Like go to the hospital. And so you're looking for those sorts of, so if you're depending on, what's going on here, this allegation, there would be pictures if, depending, if you're going to allege someone abused you, you should have some evidence of that, some pictures, some photographs, doctor's reports, and on both sides, we're looking at, do you have enough to convince? And the standard is by preponderance of the evidence. These are technical things that, lawyers know. And this is why hear all of this, this jargon, this legal jargon that I'm throwing out, and look at the different factors and the things you have to put together to bring this case. Get a consultation, okay? Do not play around with this one. Get a consultation if you have been served and someone is alleging abuse is involved. Now, let's talk quickly about corporal punishment. So in the case, sometimes, some people believe in corporal punishment. And what if there's a difference between what mom wants and dad wants, or each parent wants, in terms of child rearing? And sometimes, there can be, you can maybe hit a child. That wasn't the case in my case, but it can be the case where, you hit the child and there is a mark, It gets into the law. So the law in Maryland has spoken on this. It's quite clear that corporal punishment is not per se abuse. Now, that means it must be reasonable, and if it leaves some scarring and some bruising that looks kind of, like you went in, that may give rise that maybe there's a lot of anger and you did it with malicious intent. And, that can be an issue. It gets gray at that point. So corporal punishment, again, is not per se abuse, but to the degree it was executed, and there's some interesting case law about it, like it's funny because the law says, things have happened when parents have been beating their kids that led to an injury. Like say the child was trying to get away. You know what I mean? The child was scrambling and maybe they had a belt buckle and the belt hit the child someplace they didn't intend, like in the eye or something like that. Now the child is seriously injured. Is that child abuse when the parent was beating the child? And there's this law in Maryland where the court was like, well, no. And there you have it. They said not necessarily, but they're going to look at the circumstances, look at what happened. They're going to look at how did the bruise occur, and the degree as to what it is. Is it a black and blue mark? Was there blood and bleeding? Were there broken bones? All these factors matter, right? And to the degree that it gets, that it's really out of control, you're going to have another situation going on, namely whether Child Protective Services feels that either parent should be raising this child if they're allowing this level of abuse to occur. So if it gets to that level, you're going to be dealing with, whether you're going to be meaning you have more issues than the other party, depending. It all depends on who did what, So watch that. Okay. So there's a new era. We are evolving as human beings. And, you guys need to be on the same page. And if there's some sort of corporal punishment, needs to be done with reason and care and not malicious and not too much to cause serious bodily harm. Okay. And there can be. So that's what I want to say on that. So you kind of know. Now for an adult, Same thing. If you allege that someone abused you, there should be some, documentation. If you're concerned about this and it's going on, make sure you have pictures and you take proper precautions, things that you would normally do if you are hurt. And usually that's a pretty clean one to be able to, establish that someone hit me. Look, now if they hit you and you say they hit you, but you didn't do anything, there was no bruising. I mean, I'm not saying that don't mean it didn't happen, but I'm just saying, if you're in a domestic now, and that slides into another type of claim, which is different. And that goes into domestic violence, right? We're not going to be looking for. So the physical abuse to me seems like there was an altercation that ended up with bodily harm. There was a fight. I got a broken nose, bloody eye, we had a fight. And this is where we're going to get off this train. And I'm going to go get this civil protective order. And I have evidence. Now, in relationships, it's not that clean. You know what I mean? It's not that clean. It's not all the time that, you're in a domestic situation that you just, I'm gone, no, there's a lot of emotional ties. Your life could be tied up in this scenario. Moving might not be, easy and viable. And you could be financially dependent on the person, or the person's financially dependent on you. So the court's going to take a longer view. They're going to look at, the relationship, the history of the relationship between the parties. And they think that's always kind of relevant, being that in this civil protective order, it's born from the relationship that you two have together. So they want to know what's going on with that. So in domestic violence, and that's the distinction there. It's not about just the pictures or the bruise, it's the history and what has happened over the course, because they know when people are afraid and could be financially, dependent, or because it's emotional. There's a breaking emotionally, and which goes beyond whether it was physical or not. It could have just been emotional, domestic violence based actions where the person's just intimidated, and the threats and things like that. So they're not just looking for that hardcore, pictures and things like that. So you got to watch it. Got to watch it in there, y'all. The court will be in your business. The law will be in your life in a way that you won't appreciate. So don't think that what happens behind closed doors always stays behind closed doors, because this order is designed to be all up in what happens behind closed doors. And we can get in quickly into what they can order. They can order that somebody leave the house. This is how much they in the doors. If once they determine, that by preponderance of the evidence, which means it's just more so than not, this is not the criminal standard. And this is why it's very stressful. These cases are filed quickly. So don't delay, because you only got like 10 days between, because they're not going to wait 6 months and you say someone's running to the court saying, they're going to kill me. They're like, look, come talk to me quickly. So these cases are going to progress very fast. So if you're served, you need to get a consultation immediately, right? If something has happened and someone's bothering you, you need to, the commissioner's office is open 24 hours a day. You can go and get a protective order issued very quickly. Now, while they're going to issue it quickly, they're going to say, now, okay, I'm going to put you to safe harbor, but now I'm going to scrutinize and understand whether this should stay in place and then impugn this person's record. And it's only by preponderance of the evidence, not the reasonable standard beyond the reasonable doubt in criminal. It's like, who do I believe more? It's 51%. That is stressful as an attorney. Like, I got to slam dunk this if we're going to trial, because, I got to tilt it. And if someone, that's not a lot, So really assessing the strength of the case is critical, because deciding whether I don't want you to get a protective order if you don't deserve one, and I want you to get one if you need one. But assessing the strength of the case is really what it comes down to, and taking action very quickly, okay? So that's what I want to say about abuse when it's dealing with the kids and it comes up and we're dealing with that issue of corporal punishment. That's a special analysis we'd have to do. But generally, serious bodily harm is where we're at with it when it comes to abuse, and looking at the circumstances that led to it, looking at what happened after, matters and what evidence or paper trail there is to support whatever side you want to assert on this. Okay. So, and I really don't like the fact that, I know as a result of family law matters, people file these sometimes and they're not legitimate. I tell you, I don't like that. I think who needs them needs to get them, but just a malicious intent to shift custody, I think is a bunch of BS. So, and to create a criminal record for someone is a serious deal. So if you're involved with this or know someone that's going through this on the civil protective order side, I hope that that's not the case. But if you need help, that's what I do, and I'm available. But even if not me, make sure you get a consultation before you step foot in the courthouse for the first hearing as you start to create a record, okay? So I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope that you are enjoying 2022. My information is in the description below if you need to reach out and speak more in depth, in particular about a situation that you may find yourself in. I am available. Just generally, if you're in a relationship that keeps boiling over to this boiling point, really, you're going to have to probably make a grown-up decision that it's toxic and maybe get some support from a professional therapist or someone that can help you take steps, and especially if it's on a domestic violence side. There are great organizations like the House of Ruth that if you need help with kind of leaving a situation, there's a lot of support. And I mean, there were just reports last week. Like, did y'all see that in Montgomery County where a person ran over his wife? Did y'all see that I try not to catch the news, but they caught me. Oh, they caught me on this one. A guy by the bank or something. I'm telling you, look it up. In Montgomery County, a couple days ago, a guy, I don't know. They talk about they don't know what gave rise to it. It seemed like it's out of the blue. No one runs somebody over out of the blue. It's probably child support or something. You know what I mean? Guys, this stuff really can bubble over and explode. So keep it de-escalated. Keep a pulse on it. There's other love. This ain't even love. If you're suffering like this, get support, get help. And if you need a consultation, you know how to reach the Carmise Graves Law Firm, and we got you back. So you guys take care. Have a great day. And I'm off to see the wizard. Later.
I'm Carmise Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area. One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an answer that we need to